This video's been the most difficult one for me because when I had this idea 6 weeks ago to make this series, I had no idea that the expose from Marlena and the ensuing My Truth video series was going to come out. So that was going to be a lot of what I covered. Instead, what I'm going to do is build on that and kind of assume that you've already seen some of that. If you somehow haven't, I will link Pretty Pastel Please's series. She does a really good job of going over everything. But there still are some things that I have personally felt have been neglected in discussing, so we're going to go over all of that today. But I do want to start with a basic idea of what marketing is, and I know this is going to sound boring, but it's going to get interesting, so hang in there. So marketing is the research and the action through which you make your brand visible to the public. And I think that what's interesting about marketing is this starts at the very beginning phases of a brand when you're coming up with the brand and what it's going to be. You ask yourself, how is it different? Who are you going to sell your products to? What are the products going to do for people that other products on the market can't do? So one of the approaches of marketing is to kind of create this image of a brand that almost gives it an identity in the same way that humans have an identity. So some examples of this would include a brand carrying themselves in this type of best friend image way. Another brand might choose to carry themselves in a professional way, and they're going to, in the end, be very different brands that market in very different ways. And again, since marketing is the way the brand is carrying themselves, maybe on their Instagram, if they are the best friend brand, maybe they'll advertise their highlighter as lit, blinding to the gods, whereas the more professional brand is going to advertise on their Instagram their highlighter as not emphasizing texture, being appropriate for a work setting. Now when you get into advertising, advertising is a subset of marketing. Because this series is a lot about money, we're going to talk about how much money brands dedicate to the marketing aspect. This actually depends on the establishment level of a brand. So for example, a growing brand is going to spend around 10%. That's the industry standard on their marketing, whereas a more established brand can spend 5%. So to put that into an example form, we talked about Anastasia Beverly Hills making $340 million last year in revenue. That means they could spend $17 million in their marketing costs. I think this is why it's so interesting to me that there has been such a backlash in this word about the $60,000 sponsored video kind of going mainstream. So many people have been really, really upset about that, have felt almost betrayed, have felt it's not fair. But it's so funny because if you break that down, that $60,000 figure, just in terms of Anastasia as the example, it's less than 1%. It's not even a half of 1%. In terms of their total marketing costs. And this is a big reason why brands have turned so much towards Instagram and YouTube and other social media forums for their advertising, is because even though $60,000 sounds like a lot to us, and it maybe sounds unfair for one person to receive for one video, you have to contrast that to the cost of standard advertising. An example being a 30-second ad in the Super Bowl costs an average of $5 million. You compare that to the $60,000 20-minute video that stays up forever and ever, targets that specific audience already that a brand is going for, and it just seems to make a lot of sense to go that route. Most of the controversy around this is coming from individuals like you, like me, hearing the $60,000 figure for one video and just thinking it's absolutely not fair, right? Well, the backlash has been interesting in itself because these influencers have come out saying, yes, these brands should be paying us this, if not more, because it's such a tiny amount. And I think that really both sides have a point here. I do think that $60,000 is a lot of money, but also it's not. It's not. Because when you really think about what the impact of some of these huge influencers have on brands and the amount of money that they bring in, it is so much larger than that number. I think I can give an example here that maybe most people will understand. For some reason, we have this understanding and acceptance around the idea of celebrities getting paid $60,000 for who knows what, one show, one meet and greet. If it was Beyonce or Rihanna, we would all hear that figure, nod our heads, and say, okay, all right. I love Riri. But when it comes down to these influencers, I think that part of the disconnect is that we haven't really established them as celebrities on the same level that we have of actresses and singers. I think it's that the way that we view YouTube, we kind of imagine a friendship with the person on the other side of the screen, and it has to do with the way that they talk to us. They do talk so personally to us. They do say things like, "I love you guys," and it makes us feel much closer to them, and I suspect that's where this sense of betrayal is coming from when you factor in that not only are these influencers getting paid $60,000, it's because we are watching their videos. So it kind of starts to feel like, wow, you made that off of me. That's not right. But I do want to give you an example of why I think that influencers completely feel that they deserve $60,000, if not more, and I want to do it through Morphe. Oh, Morphe, the brand that we all love to hate if we are small influencers, and we absolutely love if we're huge influencers. Morphe has a really interesting story, and this is really easy to Google. Just type Morphe story in and you can read all of this yourself. Morphe realized way before anybody else the power of social media, and rather than just use influencers to, kind of get information about their products out, Morphe decided, let's bring these influencers in and make them feel like a part of our brand and also pay them much more than these other companies are paying the influencers. This really allowed Morphe to actually not just compete with MAC and other brands of that level, but to outperform them in many ways because they took in these huge influencers and paid them well. From what I've heard, and again, I'm not a Morphe affiliate, nor am I a Morphe fan, but from what I've heard, influencers make between 10 to 20% commission on their codes, which is really high. I do know a little bit about affiliate links. I do know that the standard is between 2 to 4%, and usually an 8% commission is really high. 10 to 20% is almost unheard of. You see these influencers swatch a Morphe palette and go, "Oh, I cannot believe how beautiful it is." Well, it's nothing special, but that's the power of money. You pay somebody significantly better to show your products, you're going to see a big return of investment. So my mathematical example here is going to go over Jaclyn Hill and the original Morphe palette. Now, we're not even going to talk about the Vault. I'm not in the mood to, but we'll talk about the first one. That palette retailed for $38, and my example here is that I want to assume 1 out of every 10 of Jaclyn Hill's subscribers purchased this palette at full price. Now that may seem like a bit of a higher estimate than is most likely, but I also think that there were a lot of people who bought this palette who don't even subscribe to Jaclyn Hill. So Jaclyn Hill has 5.4 million subscribers, actually more than that, but we'll round down. The palette was $38. Let's assume that it cost Morphe $6 to make each palette. Again, this is probably going to shock people, but we already broke down how that's possible in the true cost of makeup, number 1. And let's assume that $10 of every palette is going to Jaclyn Hill. Now that's a high estimate, yes, but I actually think it could be a pretty close one, because if Morphe pays 20% in commissions, then they're already going to be paying her $7 for each palette. Tack on another $3 because she did design it. She deserves to make a good, substantial amount of money off the palette, right? That means that at 540,000 palettes sold at a profit of $10 each, Jaclyn Hill made $5.4 million off her first palette. Now again, remember, this is a hypothetical, but $5.4 million is probably not too far off. It may even be way under. Again, the point of this example is just to show you how large these numbers are, not to tell you this is factual, okay? Now, $5.4 million to Jaclyn Hill is a lot, but how much did the brand make? Well, at a net profit of $22 per palette, that would give the brand $11,880,000. Almost $12 million. Profit for Morphe, profit for Jaclyn, everybody's happy. And really this is all quite fascinating to think about what Morphe managed to do for themselves as well as for influencers. When you compare this to Nikki Tutorial's Too Faced collab, where she apparently was paid $50,000 for her palette, it seems like quite a no-brainer as to why these large influencers are no longer really promoting Too Faced or MAC or any of these brands that kind of retain their own money and instead moving over to Morphe and Ofra and these types of brands that pay their affiliates, pay the influencers very, very well. I mean, 5 million versus 50,000, what would you do? I also wanted to go ahead and talk a little more about PR because it seems to me that not everybody understands what PR is. PR is the cheapest way for brands to market their product. Essentially what they're doing is putting the product into your hands and getting you interested in it. And yes, I said you, because PR is very frequently received by you and me and hundreds of thousands of other people who don't realize they get PR. But in fact, brands make these small little deluxe sample sizes, give them to Sephora, give them to Ulta, mark them on the back with not for sale, and then Ulta and Sephora give them to you free with the stipulation of X amount of purchase. You know, everybody wins in this scenario because you are spending money, Ulta and Sephora are making money, you are getting not just what you purchased, but also free little samples. You enjoy the free samples, you buy more products, and we have this cycle going on and on. I just think it's so funny that that aspect of PR gets skipped over so often. Yes, there are huge PR boxes that are sent out to larger influencers, but all of us get PR. My last point that I wanted to make and my kind of wrap up for this series is, why am I doing this? What made me want to turn on a camera and start talking about how much money there is in this industry? Well, this is all to make you aware of the huge amounts of money, but also for a reason. And that's that we often act kind of as the puppets in this game. It's something that I've noticed for years. As a person with a collector's mindset myself, me and Alex Voss, I joined all of these Facebook groups and followed Instagram accounts and joined subreddits for all of these things that I like to collect. And it's always amazing to me how much we as individuals push each other to keep buying. I put myself on a low buy this year of my own variety, mainly just because I recognize I'm a small channel and I don't make enough money to buy every single new release. Some larger channels most certainly can afford to because they get the money back in views. I don't. However, I'm still a part of this community and I still get asked these questions of, are you buying this latest palette? Are you buying this latest collection? And it's kind of like, no. And I feel like it's met with the strangest reactions depending on the community that you're a part of. You know, we do have these kind of makeup rehab groups where people are encouraging each other not to buy, and sometimes that ends up getting its own variety of pushy. And then we have the other side of things where you have to buy every new release, keep up, spend. And it's almost like there's no middle ground, and I really wish that there was. So that's ultimately been the point of this series, is just to talk about it and kind of make ourselves aware of the amount of money, of the push of consumerism that is going on, and maybe keep ourselves a little bit balanced. My goal is to have more of an appreciation for what I presently have, not to practice this art of hate panning products that I'm sick of, but just to kind of enjoy what I do have and not feel a constant need to buy the next new thing. I tend to think that awareness is one of the best defenses that we can have, and the more that you know that this is going on, the more you are aware of it. So that the next time you see a brand practicing the art of fellow kids, you can say, oh, I know what you're doing, you're going for the best friend image. Or when you see a brand post to Instagram, should I eat tonight or should I buy new lipstick? You will know exactly what they're trying to pull. I hope you found this series to be informative. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, YouTube.